Gentlemen, how are you? Welcome. Good to see
All
you.
right.
Happy birthday, Paul. Cheers.
Thank you.
Having us.
So let's get right into it. Vance, figured we'd open with you. Given all the hype about AI these days, how does one assess or know what is real or practical for their ecom business?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to answer that, but we do see a lot of hype, and if you believe the media, I always say like, AI is going to solve world peace tomorrow or something like that, except it probably spelled peace wrong or something like that, right? So I think the key for anybody going into this or already in it, maybe a little bit, you'd probably be surprised how much AI you're already using in your day-to-day. A lot of the decisions being made on where your spend is going or where your ads are being displayed or whatever it is, that's already using a lot of AI. So what I really like to look at is, are you asking the right questions of what you're doing? That comes sometimes at the beginning when you're creating that first use case, but if you're not asking the right questions, you're not going to get the right answer. Are you asking if people are leaving and why they're leaving, or should you be asking why are they staying and what makes them stay? And when you ask the right questions, then you can make better judgments about, how you want to, what tools you might buy, the platforms you might engage in, or, how you might want to structure your own development, or, if you're doing something in custom space too.
Nice. And then so when it comes to opportunities, what are the best ones right now to get a fast return on investing in AI and machine learning implementation for ecom?
Yeah, I mean, that's another great question. I mean, we've seen a lot of adoption, in the metrics area, in the budgeting area. And, again, there's a lot of underlying technology there that's using AI. And, we've been able to see how that makes, substantially better returns in many cases, can save a lot of human labor. I mean, all that manual labor of targeting that we used to have to do and changing budgets and moving it around and things like that. And so, a lot of that's already in there happening already. But what I think is most exciting, and this certainly came up yesterday in the Mastering Memes session with Reed Haley and the group, is really talking more about the creative side. And this is where I'm excited about where we're going. We've worked a lot on what works and knowing what. Now we have to start using AI to understand why. And this is, to me, this is the most exciting part, because we're focusing in more on first-party data now with the changes from Google, the changes from Apple. We're not going to be able to use the third-party data anymore, which I think is good. We need to be looking at our first-party data and then really digging into the unstructured content. That's the images, the copy, the videos that we use. And we can figure out what video will work best or what ad worked best, but why did it work best? What was it? Was it the blue shirt I'm wearing? Was it the palm tree in the background? If we can answer why, then we can repeat the success, but we can also eliminate a lot of the risks. And AI's, that's a great use of AI. We focus a lot on growing the revenue or reducing the churn, but it's a prediction tool. What it can really help us do is make sure we're performing better all of the time, as opposed to having these guesswork failures or making decisions that just go the wrong way. So, leveling out that performance and avoiding risk. So I think there's really big opportunities there. What Reed was talking about, though, which I love so much, was just that social listening side, and using that virtuous circle of listening to the users on social, designing out product, getting that product to market, and then listening again of how they reacted to the humor in it or whatever it was, right? And then feeding that straight back into that cycle. So that's probably where we can get the biggest gain right now, just listening to the why that's happening out there with our audiences.
Right. And obviously, in addition to AI, augmented reality and VR is making a lot of headlines these days. Jeffrey, why is the adoption of VR slower than many of us had expected? What's the bottleneck there?
Yeah, I mean, you've definitely heard in the news the metaverse term. Metaverse is like the buzzword of the month. Zuckerberg's building the metaverse, Microsoft, Epic Games building the metaverse. People are spending billions of dollars. Decentraland, if you're into crypto, it's another metaverse. So a lot of metaverses being launched, but not a lot of people in headsets. So we're starting to see a shift. And I think it's really just been price point is a big piece of it. So you've got the new Oculus Quest headset. You could see, since the release is just as Facebook's Oculus as an example, they're getting cheaper, right? They're getting cheaper, and with cheaper headsets come better and greater adoption. Where a lot of the metaverses are really focused on social gaming. So there's been a lot of reliance on gamers to play with their friends. VR Chat, if you've heard of them, Rec Room, they're raising $80, $100 million. The Facebook Horizons just launched. they have their office space trying to replace the virtual office, but the bigger metaverse is really for again, gaming and hanging out with your friends. So I think as companies start emerging in the space, and there's more and more of them coming out, either tackling the enterprise world or the social world, we'll definitely start seeing greater adoption.
Nice. And with regard to the workplace, what are the best uses for VR in that space? Is the tech good enough for corporate use?
Yeah, it's interesting. The few companies that there's a company called Glue, there's a company called Immersive, which is really cool. You look them up, they're really building a replacement for the virtual office. So there's a lot of companies that are trying to replace kind of the computer screen, what you normally do because you're working on a remote team in a virtual world where you could have multiple screens, lots of plugins, which is super cool. So there's a lot of platforms coming there. Those are available. I think a lot of them are trying to be headset agnostic. So it's Rift, Oculus, and others, and as others come out. My company Morpheus is more focused on the culture issue with remote teams. So we actually send headsets as part of kind of like a membership model to the whole team, whether it be distributed or smaller offices, onboard people with headsets, desktop computers, mobile devices, as accessible as Zoom. And then we kind of rebuild all of the offsite exercises, whether it be a diversity workshop or a team scavenger hunt. And we just host these kind of monthly engagements, and that's what our platform. So between us and these others, you're kind of seeing replacement for the virtual office, replacement for the offsite, the leadership development, and we're going to start seeing more. I think as headsets become more everywhere, as it's easy as Google, I know you could put an Android phone in a cardboard box, and they tried that, right? But we'll start seeing more Ready Player One level simple glasses that you could put on and you're in the VR world. And I think that's where we're all headed.
Gotcha. And sort of segue to Paul, how did BRC VR come into existence? And can you maybe briefly explain what that is for people who may not be familiar with it and how you were involved?
Yeah, absolutely. Before I do that, I just want to add on to the point of adoption in VR. Essentially, it's an issue of use cases. And as Jeffrey pointed out, gaming was the original use case for VR, where you can play your game that you're playing on a desktop, just plug in a VR headset to it, and now you're playing it in VR. Now what we're seeing is a lot of new use cases emerging since we've been in lockdown, and we're looking for other ways to connect other than just through Zoom or through our computers. And that's really how BRCVR came into existence. It was a group of individuals from the Burning Man community. Burning Man's a festival every year that happens in the Nevada desert, hosts about 80,000 people. And after about 35 years of running, it got canceled for the first time. So now you have a whole community of people, right? Many talented, many tech people that are part of it, that are like, we still want to do this. We still want to have this festival. How do we do it? And coincidentally, one of my campmates who I camp with at Burning Man had spent 6 years mapping all of Burning Man in virtual reality. He's a VR designer, and he just happened to do this on his spare time. So 6 years later, a pandemic happens, and it was just a perfect synergy of having that world available to host people into it. And so, fast forwarding a few months later, we signed a contract with Burning Man, and we host one of their official virtual experiences in VR, and also it was available on desktop as well. Last year, we had about 90,000 joins in 8 days, so more than how many visit the annual desert. This year, we just had it about a month, less than a month ago, and we're still counting the numbers of how many people attended, but the previous year, we had about 1,500 hours of events, DJ sets, workshops, meditations, all the things that you would normally experience at an arts and music festival. This year, we had 3,500 hours, so over double the amount of hours of events. So it's most likely going to exceed the attendance of last year. It was also covered by every major news publication: Forbes, Wired, Fast Company, Mashable. The thing that really was the aha moment was it's a place where a community can gather. It's a place where you can go in and you can see your friends from across the world where you would usually have to travel to one central destination, and you're able to be there and feel the presence of someone else, have eye contact with them, walk around, experience different art and other virtual shows or concerts or music performances with your community of friends. And I think that's the use case that we're seeing taking off. And BRCVR is a subset. It's a smaller group of people within a large organization called Big Rock Creative. And Big Rock Creative is all about creating these virtual experiences for communities. And so there are other clients they're working with that they're going to be creating these virtual experiences for. And it's all direct to consumer. So it's really working with the organization to bring their community into VR.
I see. Would that be an example of the kinds of experiences BRCVR has created? What do you see as the real opportunity for it in terms of the future of virtual experiences?
Yeah, the real opportunity is to create a parallel virtual experience to the real life counterpart. Every year there are millions of people that watch the Olympics, and then there are a few 100,000 that actually go. Every year there are people that want to go to Comic-Con or want to go to a live show, but they just can't. And there is an opportunity to create these experiences in VR and allow them to experience it as if they were physically there. Now, of course, technology is a huge limitation. This year we had green screen set up in downtown LA. We had DJs come in to record their sets behind a green screen, and then we imported their hologram inside of VR. We couldn't do that real time. The technology just wasn't there yet. Microsoft's working on a product called their HoloLens, where you put on the HoloLens and you can actually interact with people in virtual reality. They also have a 3D scanning system that costs way more than any consumer can afford to be able to real time import them into a virtual space. Now we're a few years away from that kind of technology being at your fingertips. Now the iPhone can scan 3D models, so you can import them into VR. So it's all getting there, but we're still a little bit of a ways away from this all being live, happening real time inside of VR.
Wow. Question for Vance, sort of pivoting back to AI, and again, some of these other technologies. Can you talk to us about how Apple's recent iOS privacy changes and Google's plans to phase out third-party cookies, how that is all impacting e-commerce, and why AI and these other technologies are more critical than ever for marketers to compete and reach larger audiences? I'm curious to hear what you guys think as well.
Yeah, I mean, this has just been huge for the industry, and you don't go a day without seeing a newsletter from one of the peak bodies or associations or a marketer, some article or something talking about the impact it's having. We spent a lot of time working with data that was data pools or third-party collected data, and using that to base predictions on, and a lot of business models were set up on that. Marketing departments are based on that. Subscriptions to these data services happened, and so this is all a big challenge, and it's almost like walking into the unknown. But what is kind of surprising when you sit back, and this is where we can cross into the use case discussion, but when you sit back and you look at your organization, be it the agency or be it the client you're working with, that first party data is already there in most cases, and we just weren't using it because it takes a little bit more effort or a little bit more thinking of how we're going to put it together. It's not just a subscription service that we're going to go subscribe to as the agency so we can give these predictions or use it. So I think it's a real positive, but I do think it's challenging. It's challenging everyone to sit back and go, well, where are we going to get this first party data? Okay, well, it might be in a CRM, it might be in a point of sale system, it might be off the social data feed, it might be off our Google Analytics or our Google AdWords dashboard or whatever it is. But each of those are in a silo, and it does create a challenge. And I'm saying, well, how do we unify that data? And certainly customer data platforms are doing that. And a lot of organizations are investing an awful lot of money in a customer data platform, which is great. It's a really good starting point. But the opportunity, I think, is really exciting, because that first party data, that is your audience. That is exactly who you are engaging every day. They're interacting with you. They are telling you what they like about you, what they like about your product, what they like about how you serve that product up. It could be coming from that chatbot you have on your website. And when talking about accessibility in AI, there's another thing that most companies, or even small creators, are having on their website. They're sitting there collecting that first party data stream off that chatbot. They're sitting there collecting it off their social. So to me, it's actually a good change. We need to make this change. There's still value in some, some other types of data for benchmarking and evaluation. You want to see how you stack up to whoever your competitors are and such. So you still do need to get other data, but that ability to basically turn on your first party data and say, well, what don't I know about my customer? What should I know more about my customer? Where am I missing it? Like there's, none of us convert at the rate we could convert at. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit in our data. And if we can activate that in our first party data, geez, that's a much more richer relationship we're having with our customers and about the things they actually care about, like the real things they care about our product. So I think for creators, especially, and we've heard a lot of good sessions in the conference so far from creators, you get replaced as you grow. When you're small, you talk with your customers, you're there selling it. You know the context of why they care about your product, why they loved using it or whatever it is. And then we get bigger and, we have marketing people and we have product people and we have data silos. And suddenly as a creator, you're so removed from context. Well, that first party data is where that context still sits. So we can use AI to find out that context and kind of almost simulate that relationship so we can be, back connected to our real consumer.
Nice. Paul, Jeffrey, any color you want to add or actionable insights there?
No, I mean, that is not my world. That is super fascinating, but not my world.
Cheers. Well, to ask you another question, Jeffrey, with distributed teams becoming more of a standard across industries, how do you see technology expanding the capacity for company culture and productivity in the coming years?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. So Paul's Burning Man, right? I was there. This was peak pandemic. This is not this past September, but a year ago. I was in a hotel room in New York quarantining because I wanted to visit family, and I had a headset. And I went to virtual Burning Man. So the virtual burn, I hung out with Paul, who was producing the whole thing, which was incredible because I got to go all the cool places in the virtual burn. And it was there where I was in New York, in a hotel room, in a headset, hanging out with all my best friends scattered across the country. And we hung out all night and then the next day and seeing friends and having moments and having shared experiences. And it was there that the inspiration for my company Morpheus XR came about because, a week later we had another culture event at my other company, and it was Zoom. And it was another charades game on Zoom. And, followed by a scavenger hunt inside my house looking for a water bottle. I don't know if everyone's experiencing these Zoom culture events, right? So people are trying to leverage Zoom, this kind of 2D technology, to create human connection. And what I realize is the trick is VR. Mm-hmm. And as companies start to think about how to level up Zoom, it is VR. The problem is VR hasn't been as accessible, to your first question. But now that the headsets are there, how can you create shared experiences that build company culture by bringing teams together across the world? And I think that's what's the big opportunity for companies right now. Whether you're buying headsets on your own, you're doing them through a company like Morpheus where you get the headsets and then you're facilitated with experience, the onboarding. I think the technology's there. It's just a matter of being creative about it. The diversity and inclusion workshop that you'd normally have, to rent a hotel room for and bring in a facilitator, you could do that today in VR, in a skin, and have really engaging conversations. And it's all spatial audio. So right now I can't kind of walk on the side and have a conversation with Paul. But in VR, you could have small groups. You could have large groups. You could have a speaker. You could have a panel. You could have a keynote. So I think that's kind of the path that we're on, is leveraging virtual reality to start accomplishing the goals that you normally only be able to do in person, because Zoom just doesn't cut it. And what we're seeing today is you could have, events up to, we just did a scavenger hunt for Facebook Reality Labs, right? 75 people scavenger hunt. It was amazing. People going to different worlds, but it was people that never even met each other in real life. And one's in Switzerland, one's in New York, and they're actually hanging out in VR. And I think that's where company culture is built from, right? Real connection, real conversations, and getting educated on a panel and then having a Q&A and then being able to go to the bar, virtual bar, and have a conversation with someone that you're interested in. That is just so cool, and it was never really possible till today. And I think these are the experiences that companies build cultures on. And for me, that is the lifeblood. And to root it back to Burning Man, it's these experiences that people get to have and then be like, what else can I offer in VR? What other solutions are there? What other problems can be solved in education, in marketing? And how do you show a product that, if you can't be and, visit all of your clients in a regional area or prospective clients, could you bring them into a virtual space, a virtual showroom? And these are all the possibilities that are really there today. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot more companies start to get back. We had a VR push a few years ago and it fell flat. It was really focused on gaming, right? Everything was gaming. And now I think with the capabilities, we're looking at a lot more.
That's really exciting, Jeffrey. I love the way you put that because, with so many people, engineering teams working remotely, you just don't have that creativity when you're not having people together. And, we can't always be together. And I don't think that model is going to be we're not going back to that model. People will be distributed around the world. But anything I could do to get my developers to have that sense that they're together and coding together and being creative together, or the designers being creative together and make it real for them, I think it will make a huge difference to, well, the creativity, but also their satisfaction in their job.
Yeah. We actually had to, we had to come up, we have to send the headsets out right now.
Yeah.
Right now as part of Morpheus' model, we send the headsets out, we onboard you. But in the future, I think there's just going to be a greater personal ownership of headsets. I think that's kind of where things go. And then more companies will be able to flourish because headsets are probably just like I have a desktop computer, people will also have headset. I don't know if you guys know this, but 1 in 5 Facebook employees works for Facebook Reality Labs, their VR and AR division. That is it's a city. So there's when Zuckerberg talks about the metaverse, there's a huge investment happening to kind of the Ready Player One future where you can live, work, have fun, educate yourself, be in a virtual world.
Yeah, the metaverse is coming. It's just about how do we onboard our community or our own company into that metaverse. And onboarding is really the biggest challenge, and we're solving it in different ways. Jeffrey and I, two sides of the same coin or opposite sides of the same coin. Right. When you think about a new technology, it's something that no one knows what the experience is going to be like. It's not like going from a feature phone to a smartphone. This is like going from like a car to a plane, and you need to learn how to fly it all of a sudden. And you don't just do it by buying it and just trying it yourself. That's it's scary for people. Even with VR, it's scary for someone to just be like, I've never been in VR before, I'm just going to go for it. It's never that easy. It's always about getting it from someone else. Like I got my first VR headset from a coworker who was like, hey, I just bought this. This is cool. Do you want to try it? And then they were there with me, just holding my hand through that experience. And Jeffrey's company experiences that on a daily basis. They're constantly onboarding each and every client to that experience. For us, it was the community that was onboarding itself. That it was, hey, I'm a leader of a Burning Man camp. I want to bring my camp into Burning Man. Let me either buy my camp headsets or enroll them all into investing in one, because I see a future where I want to continue to have these events inside of VR even after Burning Man. And we saw that happen a lot. There were over 250 camps that participated by building their camp in VR. But after Burning Man, their camp is still in VR. It's not like we shut it down. The main Burning Man is offline, but all the camps are still online. So each of these camps that usually have monthly or quarterly events where they fundraise, they have DJs, they want to raise money for their for their community or for a good cause, they can still have those events in VR. And so that's the onboarding that's happening from a consumer standpoint. And then Jeffrey described how the onboarding is happening from a business standpoint.
I think what's exciting there is and all that is generating data as well. I mean, all of that is generating massive amounts of data, which, perfect for an AI, start predicting different elements of that, what consumer products could be in there that aren't there. What do consumers actually want to engage with in there? What would they like to buy in there and upsell to and do? And, it's a perfect use of, using all that data. Really.
I will stand corrected then, because I said it wasn't my world, but you're right.
It's your world.
You're 100% right. We actually talk about, we're onboarding thousands of people into VR. The data that we're getting to make a more automated onboarding experience is going to be really valuable. Yeah. When you're, we just did a big sales event in VR, right? So what about engagement metrics, right? If I'm a salesperson, how many minutes was I engaged with another person talking? Was I just sitting on the side? Is that prospective client just sitting in the corner alone? And after, you'll be able to, because it's all data, and it's all technology, so it really is a merger of the two.
Yeah, you think like, did they move their hands to go touch the product or move it around or look at it?
Absolutely.
Why did they go for the red one and not the green one? And why did this this setting work and this setting not work for it, or whatever it would be? I mean, that's all the data, and you can use all the guesswork in the world to try and figure that out, or you can use the data you're actually generating and make good predictions and probably hit the target a hell of a lot more than you would otherwise.
Yeah.
Good.
That's literally why we had to build our own. What you're alluding to is one of the reasons we had to build our platform. We couldn't use other platforms built for consumers because the analytics, the engagement, the data, the privacy, all of those elements, they're not built for enterprise. So we had to kind of start from scratch and go from there.
And I mean, that's the perfect example of first-party data. You are capturing so much data from your users, telling you exactly what they want to do and where they want to go and how they want to use it and everything else next. I mean, fantastic data capture there. And, AI is a perfect example of how do you use that vast amount of data in a 3D world, especially. You're creating far more than in a 2D situation. So
totally.
Sorry, Tony.
No. So what do you guys think? Are there untapped industries where AI, VR, and AR can really take over? I don't know if that's something Paul or you, Vance, or Jeffrey want to tackle.
Well, I'll just start. I think it's just, you're gonna start seeing it everywhere.
Wow.
Especially AR. I mean, in manufacturing, just think of like layering models in front of you and working with people from across the world on real life, like a mold of a car or a building, being able to kind of layer on technology in real life right in front of you. And in the collaboration side of VR, I think it's never ending. And then there's the layer of AI on top of all that. So I think it's just like we're on this kind of one-way street, which is going to be super fascinating, a little scary. I don't know if you saw the Tesla bot and how it's one of the features is that it's slower than you are in case you need to run away. That was like an actual feature. So it's a one-way street, and I think the applications are going to be endless, and hopefully humans will find ways to continue to add value as kind of the robotics and these automation tools start replacing jobs, and instead this technology enhances the work that we could do to build different kinds of jobs.
Yeah, I think the human element is the exciting part on the technology. I mean, from an AI sense, it's almost like we're in a post-AI world already. From a consumer side, we're collecting, that is already, recommendation engines, all those sorts of things are all using AI already. And so we're using it way more, even just Google Maps and things like that. It's already rerouting us for traffic. I mean, we're already using AI every day so much. But the exciting part of where the technology is going is probably from the human side, in that how do we adapt our workforces? How do we change about, like what Paul talked about before, the right use case? Well, do our staff, do our teams actually know how to put together the right use case to use any of these technologies? They probably don't in most cases, or only have a very vague idea, maybe something they've read or a conference they attended. They really haven't been trained yet to think about their operation, how they transform what the human does. If the AI is crunching the data and doing the base level of predictions, well, then the humans move to a new role, and that's a higher value added role. That's judgment, and it's about telling stories with that data. All right, we need a good use case to tell, we need to have a use case and tell a story about that use case. And so I think, the future is actually really exciting from the human creator point of view, because these technologies are becoming adopted and, normalized, at least in the case of AI.
Yeah, that's really important you said that, Vance. It's really about judgment versus prediction, and I think that's where AI is still very limited. And when we talk about AI, really we're just talking about deep learning and pattern recognition, and feeding a computer enough data for it to come up with its own patterns. But really, there's not any innovation in that. The computer can create something out of nothing like a human can, and so that's something where AI has a lot of room to grow. And when we look at deep learning, that came like what, 60, 70 years ago. Like those formulas have been written many, many years ago that we're still using and creating different applications for, like computer vision, like NLP, like all these different, great applications of this one AI innovation that we've had.
Yeah, that's spot on. I mean, math was invented a very long time ago. All these algorithms were invented a very long time ago. How we apply it and use it is the exciting part. And we're certainly seeing products like that start to use it in exciting ways that save us time, or, do all kinds, scale our teams, things like that. But you're spot on.
Yeah. I think we have some questions in the chat we could get to. I think we're okay on timing, right? Do you see AR becoming more popular in more industrial settings like car manufacturing and in factories?
So we've had a lot of contact with Microsoft. Microsoft is leading in their AR with their HoloLens technology, and the best application that I've seen and heard that has been delivering real-time results is using AR in a manufacturing facility where the glasses can actually help the worker see flaws in a design quicker than the worker can, by recognizing differences in, think about someone on a conveyor belt and things are just going by really fast. You have to be really aware and present in order to spot any kind of defections, while the glasses are always on and they're always assisting the person wearing them, making sure they're not missing anything that a human would miss just based on, being tired or being distracted.
Yeah, I would add to that, in the VR space, what we're seeing on the culture side has certainly been kind of your basic culture experiences that you're replacing with Zoom. But where we see it going, the demand is trainings. Lots of studies have come out that because you are wearing a headset and you have a human soul attention, the speed at which you retain learnings is a lot higher than if you are in a room with lots of people, you have your phone, lots of distractions, so your attention. And then even just think about like job interviews. We have one workshop called unconscious biases. And what that has alluded to is that when you're in a job interview, you have unconscious biases just based on what they look like, what they're wearing, all their mannerisms. And that's unfortunate, right? Because it's built on just, hundreds of years of human conditioning. And what we're seeing is the ability to leverage VR. And I think we're going to start seeing this even in HR world. We're going to start seeing this in recruiting, where you could have perhaps a just standard virtual avatar where you're interviewing somebody, which eliminates any biases. So I think we're going to start seeing more and more use cases in VR around training, job training, around recruitment and interviews. And then it's just the gamut, right? Where else can we leverage this where you don't have to fly somewhere or drive somewhere, but just put on a headset, save environmental costs? And I don't think it's ever going to hopefully replace being in front of somebody, human to human. I don't think anything will ever replace that. But it's certainly better than, a meet or a virtual meeting where you're just on a computer.
Wow. Vance, any color you want to give around that?
I think from the AR VR side, I mean, it's not my area, not my specialty, but I think some of the applications we talked about there are exciting. And I was at a conference, I think it was probably 2 years ago almost now, and they were using VR in a testing facility. And they were able to, as a result of using the VR headsets, they were able to test their products out without having the, things break, or actually, a robot walk into a wall and have damage and things, actual real damage, and then have to reset the whole stage for testing, and then spend months looking at the data. And in this case, because it was all done in VR, they could capture all the data immediately, and they could go back into, you know, the product engineering cycle again really quickly and iterate really quickly. And they didn't actually have the cost of all the damage done and things like that. So I thought that was one of the more interesting sides of the VR. And then, you know, obviously that data collection, being able to use that data right away to predict, oh, this is how we would have fixed it. Now let's roll that out again in a VR sense. They didn't actually have to go build out again.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
We have another one in the chat. The growth of AI chatbots on e-commerce sites has been hard to ignore. How does this get even bigger than it is now?
Want me to lead on that?
Your call.
I'm happy to go. Yeah, I saw some stats, or I was at a talk the other day. I think it was Salesforce giving the talk, and they were, one of the gentlemen there was talking about up to 95% of the, you know, the transactions happening right now are actually, you know, non-human. It is via the chatbot. So I thought, wow, that's incredible, the amount that's actually happening there. And we may not know that much is happening. I mean, some of it's obvious because you're given these choices and you're instructed through this decision tree. But in many cases, maybe you don't even know that that's happening and it's not a real human there. Maybe we don't care either way. But I think again, that driving towards understanding context, the why, understanding what people, you know, the nuances, I guess, is where that's been quite challenging. And that's, you know, like Paul was saying, you know, we're not really there yet in terms of picking up on the nuances or the frustration the human might have when they're sitting there complaining about the package not coming and things like that. It's like, no, I don't want to refund it, you know. So we're not picking up that very well yet. And I think that's probably one of the more exciting, you know, places that we'll go to, because again, there's a lot of human time used up there. There's probably doing, you know, important human work, picking up on nuance, but the answers are probably quite similar to just about everybody again. So if we can start learning and understanding context, themes, putting those things together, then the chatbot world will get a lot more useful to then asking our customers the right questions or getting them to engage in the way that we need to draw the right information out of them, which makes us way better as, you know, creators or software platforms like ourselves, you know, to answer those questions to clients or marketing agencies that we work with.
Nice. I recently did a story on you guys, you know, when it came to campaign measurement and using AI to advance that. How do you measure success in e-commerce? And, you know, what are some of the biggest concerns or questions decision makers have when it comes to using AI to measure performance?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's a big one. We come from a background of using a metrics dashboard, and we want to see those conversion numbers or ROAS or whatever it is, and we want to see that move. And you know, certainly AI can help in that way in looking at the metrics and targeting those things correctly. But I think where we have to start looking at is, you know, what are we actually learning more from our customers? We need to know the why, not just what worked, like I was saying. So we want to see in those performance metrics, maybe more context, more themes, so that we can then use that to make, you know, intelligent decisions. As the humans, we can make the intelligent decisions of where to go next. Maybe we don't need to have so much of our marketing budget put into live experimentation. You know, some companies are spending 10% or more, and that's a lot of human time too. And you think of the marketing agency, a lot of them are, you know, they bill on hours or they bill on, you know, per campaign and things like that. That's not very scalable in the future. So, you know, can we use AI to then use those learnings so that we're not using as much as our human time to get to that point?
All right. I think that was all the questions we had. Guys, thank you very much for your time today. Paul, happy birthday, man. Cheers.
Happy birthday,
Thanks
Paul.
again. Yeah.
Birthday, Paul.